officially begin. This is our first episode, besides the one where I spoke to myself, of Bullshit with Writers. So I'm Nancy Smay, also known as Delancey Stewart, and this is my great idea to sit around with some writer friends and just kind of talk about all of the stuff that we love hearing about as writers. I'm always super curious about someone else's process and their superstitions and all their things. So my first guest is internationally best-selling author Kelly Collins, who is also a good friend and lives nearby.
Hi.
Well, so Kelly, let's jump into it. The very first thing, why don't you just sort of tell us, what you write, what you've been up to. I've got a million questions for you and I'm all excited, but just tell us who you are and what you've been working on for the most part.
All right. I'm Kelly Collins. I live in Colorado. And I'm working on a new small town romance, which is set in Alaska. And I'm really excited about this because I don't know if anybody watches that show, but there's a show called like Life Below Zero, and I'm obsessed with it. And I just was watching it. It's called Life Below Zero.
Life Below Zero. Okay.
Yeah. So it's just it's a show. Or have you ever watched Alone?
No.
Oh my gosh, girl. So there's a show like Alone is where they dump like 10 people off in the middle of, the Yukon or something, like some awful like place where there's no food, there's no water, there's no lodging, and they have to create a world for themselves. And no, that is not my book. Okay. However, I got inspiration from that. Yeah, I got inspiration from that from like there's also a story called Port Protection.
That's and so
okay. Yeah, so Port Protection is this very small Alaskan town that's on an island off the Prince of Wales Islands. And so I got this inspiration from that because the people in the town are so cool. And I thought, that would just make such a cool small town romance. But I couldn't call it Port Protection because that would be, there'd be a copyright law and a problem like that. So I called it Port Promise because I thought, what if a town promised something? And so the whole story starts out with this big promise, and there's a big billboard, like when you walk off the docks, there's a big sign that is the promise that like nobody will ever be alone, that the town will always take care of you, blah, 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 which is similar to my Aspen Cove series, but not the same because this is a very remote place. So people are living without electricity and they're living without running water, and it's just cool. And I'm almost finished, except for that Dawn, who is someone that you sent me to as a developmental editor, keeps sending me things like, it would be really great if, and I go, yeah. And I'm just thinking to myself, yeah, it really would, but that's going to take me another like 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do it. So
this is book 1 in a new series that you're working
on. Yeah. So it's got to be like really good. Otherwise I won't get anybody to book 2 or book 3 or, and it's slotted right now for 6 books. So there's 5 brothers and a sister. But that's kind of how I started Aspen Cove, was there was just like core group. And then that series turned into 24. So right. I don't know.
Aspen Cove is also small town steamy, right? That's sort of where you live.
Yeah. And I don't know, like I asked people like what they would give me on a scale of the steam scale. It's open door. But like, I think I'd get like 2 flames. I mean, it's not super steamy. So,
yeah.
But according to like Amazon's rules, like if you have open door sex, then it's steamy. And I don't know. What do you think? Like, what is your take? I'm going to interview you too.
I think I'm a 2 to 3 chili pepper girl, probably, as far as my books or Delancey's books. The Nancy Stewart books, my cozy mystery venture, will be 0 chili peppers because mystery writers don't like those words.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Like, what is a 5? Like, I wouldn't even consider. Like I wonder too. Like, is that like 50 Shades of Grey? Because that doesn't even seem 5-ish to me anymore. I'm like,
no. I wonder if it's like a certain type of kink. Like once you talk about certain things, you automatically catapult to the next chili pepper level.
I don't know. Like, it would be really interesting to kind of figure out like it's all perspective for sure. Yeah. I mean, I get a lot of people saying that my books are sweet, and they're definitely not sweet. Yeah. They would never be able to be in the sweet category if I wanted to.
when readers say that, I think they're really thinking about kind of the all-encompassing themes of your book and kind of the setting and everything when they say it's sweet. They don't think about things the same way that we do when we're trying to classify genre and figure out what
Right.
fit, you know. But
Yeah,
I've
I
edited
think you're
for
right.
Sierra Simone, I used to edit for, and I think that people talk about her books like, oh, so super steamy. And they are, they're kinky. There's like threesome situations and some bondage and that kind of stuff. And I think she's like considered a 4 to 5 chili pepper type of writer. So maybe it's when you throw more than 2 people in a room. I don't know.
I don't know, or wax, or
Chocolate. Maybe if there's cherries, then
no idea. But it's so funny to sit back and like you ask people, like just the other day, Melissa wrote to me and said someone's asking about the steam level of Aspen Cove, and I was like, well, it really just depends on the book because there's 24 books and they're all not the same. So I said, well, just say that it's open door and maybe like 2 to 3 flames or chili peppers and see what that, because it's certainly not more than that.
yeah. The only time I run into any trouble, I mean, with like people being shocked, is when I have a book club, and a whole bunch of new readers flood in for a free book or something, and then I get people who are like ridiculous, explicit scenes and foul language. I'm like, okay, you are not my reader.
Yeah. So I got that. Like I often don't like, I don't know if you read a lot of your reviews. I sort of skim them because they can either be like really boosting or really heartbreaking.
I like to read the
And
good ones.
so I remember coming across one that was like 1 star, and some of the 1 stars I love to read because they're so funny, right?
Yeah.
And so this one was like sex, 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 and I was like, and I had to look back to see like what book it was, and it was like book 2 of the series, which is called 100 Heartbeats, and I was just like, okay, so it's a little steamier than like 1, but it's certainly not sex, sex, sex. Like I put 1 open door scene in my books. That's generally what, that's my promise to the reader.
Yeah.
And like you always have a promise that you have to your reader. And I generally stick to my promise to my reader. And it was like 1 open door scene and then some fade to black and, some, romantic moments. But I was like, no, it's maybe just sex, not sex, sex, sex.
Either way, they're selling the book for you. So
It's just funny.
she's a certain reader.
Yeah.
So are you mostly a traditionally published or independently published author?
I am an indie author, independently published. Sorry, I can't speak.
Okay.
But yes.
And then do you publish mostly on Amazon, or are you wide, or are you kind of a mix of both? What are you doing at this point?
I've done both, but I find that Amazon just works best for my audience. So most of my readers are in KU. And so all of my books now, except for 1 series, is in KU. And that 1 series is only out of KU because it's part of the Zori app, which is that Find Your Own Adventure. And it's like the steamiest book I have in my whole catalog, and they wanted it and I said okay. And it's funny because like when I have like I do have some traditionally published things, but like they're foreign published, and most of the foreign publishers, when they come after my books, they come after, they just like, I just want the steamy stuff, which was like really early in my career. And so it's a great way for me to get like my backlist pushed forward in other countries. But they really are like, okay, what else do you have that's like really like R? And I'm like, well, I only had like 3 series, and then I started writing Small Town, and so yeah, I've got both, but I don't really consider like the foreign publishers necessarily like trad published, although they are,
No, I think that
because they're not like a huge part of my business model.
Yeah. Well, and so first of all, what countries are looking for the super steam?
Oh, Germany for sure. So Germany, France. I have books in France, Germany, and Holland, and they all just want like whatever you've got that's like super steamy.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was just like, okay.
Do you sell those rights yourself, or do you go through an agent to do that?
I sold them myself.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's impressive. I would look at the contract and be like, I need help.
It was pretty straightforward. I mean, for me, it was pretty straightforward, and it was a simple contract, and it was just, so many years, and then I have the rights back, and then the percentages that are very normal across the board foreign rights contracts. And so I get paid every quarter, and it's nice because literally I forget about it. I don't know how you forget about it, but I forget about it.
Yeah.
And then every quarter I get this like really nice check, and I'm just like, ooh.
Because you're
Yeah.
not tracking it every day the way that we do with, the K
No, because
dashboard
there's no way for me to track.
Yeah, exactly. So you just
Yeah.
you forget about it. I have stuff
Yeah.
with my old agent still. I mean, stuff that she's still collecting commission on, and so they collect the royalties. It's like $30 every quarter or something. But when I'll get the little check and be like, oh, that's right, I forgot about them.
Yeah, well, even $30 is like a few Starbucks. I mean, that's
Yeah,
it's really cool. I mean, this is like it's a good check. I mean, I have to say, like, I could probably go on a trip or something with it. Like,
it's a
it's
nice check. Good.
yeah, like I mean, I can't go to Hawaii, but I could go up to Estes Park and stay in a cabin for like a week. I
I will
mean,
come with you.
and we have to do that again.
Well, all
But
right. So, have you always been an author? What was your career path like to get here?
no. So, military wife, moved around a lot, had a job that I could move around a lot, and I was a dental assistant. So, when you're a dental, yeah, I was a dental assistant for like 20 something years, and you have people in the chair and they can't talk to you. It's kind of like playing that game, when you're in the airport and you play that game, like, what's their life? I would do that with all my patients. I'd be like, oh, they can't talk to me and tell me about their life. So I just make up a whole entire story for them while I had them in the chair.
Yeah, but your stories involve things like, ooh, likes to chew on ice cubes, and like you had insider knowledge.
Like when you're in the airport and you see that guy and he's like in this like really nice suit and you're like billionaire with a side gig and he owns a sex club. I mean, you're just like, you're saying like all this stuff in your head. Like that's what I did when I was like dental assisting. And then I used to teach dental assisting, and that was the worst job I've ever had in my life. Like, because it's like herding cats. I mean, for anybody who teaches, God bless you. Like there just takes a certain kind of person to do that. I am not that person. But it was like the homework, like teachers, like there's like the time you spend in the classroom, you spend like twice as much time at home, like grading papers and things like that. And that was what killed me. Like the whole classroom stuff was fabulous. I love that. But it was all the home time, like you just don't get paid for, that you're grading papers, or you're like every month my students, even as dental assisting students, had to write an essay on something. And so I'm having to read essays, and that, and then I'm looking at the writing and I'm like, oh, it's better. And so I just got fed up, and one day I just quit. And my husband came home and I said, I have a new job. And he said, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going to write books. And he's like, all right.
That's awesome. So he was super supportive of this?
Super supportive, always has been. And so I wrote my first book, which was, it was originally called Tempo, and it's not even published anymore because, like your first work is not your best work. And so, and so a couple of years ago, I went through like my whole, like my backlist. And I know a lot of people say, don't do that. Like, but I just pulled things that I wasn't particularly proud of. Yep. And so I was just like, I pulled it. But I came up with the idea of that. I was on a flight with my mom. My mom was like on an aisle seat and I was on an aisle seat. And you know how like when you're in a plane and there's the middle seat and then the window seat, and nobody was sitting in the middle seat. And I was like thanking the gods because there wasn't going to be someone next to me. And then all of a sudden I feel this tap on my shoulder and I turn around and there's this, like, I'm telling you, is like the most beautiful man I've ever seen in my life, in a suit. He's like, that's my seat. And I'm like, yes, it is. And I get up and my mom is across the aisle and she's like, and I said, yes, oh my God, right?
And so gods.
And so he sits down, and I think he was a lawyer. He was like looking at a brief and he was like redacting a bunch of things on it. And we never said a word to each other. But then I thought, like, how you when you're writing it, it's always like, what if, right? And I'm like, well, what if? And my first book was written about that experience, about what if you sat next to somebody who was super gorgeous and you fell asleep and did something inappropriate to them while you were like on the plane, right? Not like totally inappropriate, but like maybe you leaned on them or like was cuddling with them, and no. And then I wrote this book, and it turns out when this woman gets off the plane, she goes to this new job and she finds out he's her boss. Yeah. And it was a cute story and I loved it, but it was just like it had its day and I pulled it. And so, and I'm not unhappy that I pulled it. And it's really cool because now, like, someday I might want to go back in and like make it my best book, and I can do that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's
that's
not
the
today.
flexibility of being independent, right? You make the calls. Well, so you just talked a little bit about, I'm trying to get down my list. We're only through the very first section and I have like
I'll be
six,
less chatty.
but I'm still feeling out how this whole process will go too. But I want to get into a little bit of sort of like process stuff because I always find that so interesting. And I, especially as an editor, I talk to some clients who they like just write a bunch of scenes and then they start figuring out how they all fit together. And that like throws me close to a panic attack because I'm very linear when I write. So how do you approach a new book? You have an idea, you've kind of figured some stuff out. Do you write an outline? Do you plot it all out? What do you do?
I do not plot it all out because if I plot it all out, then the story's already told and then I'm not interested in it. So
Yes.
it just loses its magic for me. But I do outline. And I cannot write out of, like, I am also linear. I'm a linear writer. So I couldn't write like the Black woman scene, or I couldn't write, I couldn't write any of that out of order. It would drive me crazy. But I do a couple things. Like my process changes all the time. However, one of the things I do find very helpful is to take like just note cards. And if I have a scene in my head, I'll write it down. And then what I'll try to do is like find like 30 to 60 scenes that might work for this book. And I write them all down on these note cards. And then I start putting the note cards in order and when those scenes would be most beneficial for the story. And that works really well for me if I take the time to do that. Sometimes I just have like a general outline. So for this book, which is my new series, so the first book's called Timber Ridge. I had a very good idea of what I wanted and where I wanted the story to go. So I just pretty much wrote down the pinnacle moments, and then I pants to get up to that place, and then I pants to get to the next place. And then I know that, as writers, I think for any genre that you have, there's certain things that you have to hit and to make it satisfying for the reader. So I just go back in and I make sure that I hit those things.
Yeah.
But the card thing works. And if you haven't tried it, it's really pretty fascinating just to think about any scene that could possibly come up and then just lay them all out on, like, if you like a big island, like you have a massive
I have an
island.
automatic like to that suggestion, so I feel like that won't work for me. Which is not to say I won't try it, but
well, I thought so too. I thought it was going to be like awful, right? And I turned out it's not.
Idea. Like there's a part of me that's like, oh, no cards, yes. Like I like the idea of seeing it all laid out, but I also feel like I wouldn't be able to do it. So how do you?
You'd be surprised.
Where do you write? Do you write in a Word doc? Do you use Google? Do you use Scrivener? What do you do?
I write in a Word doc. So I have Scrivener and I've tried it, but like I had it way back when it wasn't really easy to transfer to a Word doc. And like, for me, it's just too many steps. And so a Word doc works fine for me. And I just write in a Word doc, and it's just one step and it's there. And then it's ready when it's ready to go to whoever it's going to, whether that's a developmental editor or, line editor or a proofreader. And so, yeah, Word doc is where it's at for me.
And so you've been writing what, 10, 15, a lot of years.
10 years. Yeah.
What have you learned about backups?
Oh my God. Oh my God. So I think the third year in writing, I had like, 60. I'm a short story writer. So my books are generally around 60,000, but I was writing a book that was like maybe 90. And that's really out of my like wheelhouse completely. And most of my books are like 50 to 60. Although this one's really long because Dawn, but I got to like 65% finished and I lost the entire document, and the book never got written. It just never got rewritten. Because you can't, well, because then rewriting it was like, I already knew it was happening and I didn't want to do it. And like, I knew that, when you're writing and you get like, you're like, oh my God, that's the best scene. Oh my God, that's the best scene. And then and then you lose it and you cannot recreate it. So now I'm obsessive about backups. Not only does it go to the iCloud, I have I work over here. So in a compartment next to my chair, I have like a one that you plug in, like a drive. And so
Yeah.
like once a week, I put everything to that drive. So at least if I lost it in the week that I haven't done it, it's a week's worth of work and not an entire manuscript.
You work on a Mac?
I do.
So don't forget, Mac people, we have Time Machine, which if you're checking, like, I don't know, every 3 years to make sure that it's still working, that's amazing. I have saved things with Time Machine.
Yeah. So I bought my own time machine because my husband and I, like, we both have one now. Because like it gets full and so because when we were both working and downloading to the same time machine, which is like a little drive that's off to the side of your computer, I think. I don't know. I'm not
in your computer. Like it's
Oh no, we actually have a time machine, like a box. You can get an extra box one that everything downloads to. It's like a backup drive too. Yeah, so I'm never losing another thing. And I say that and like tomorrow, like everything will just go.
Yeah, my worst fear. I don't even save things locally on my computer. Everything goes to Dropbox, and then I have a hard drive as well, so stuff goes out there. And I don't know. I feel very safe, but I'm sure there are flaws to my system.
I have also a desktop computer, which I never use. It's beautiful and it's lovely and it's also a Mac.
Yeah,
But I don't work in my office. My office is a beautiful office. I just don't work in there. But I saved to iCloud and I open up my computer up there to make sure that the latest and the greatest is on that drive as well.
In case
So,
the actual hardware. Yeah.
yeah.
So what we talked a little bit about process and backups and fear and that kind of stuff. Do you have any like writerly superstitions? Like, are there specific like situations that you have to be in order to make good words happen, or like what do you require?
I don't like I can pretty much write anywhere. I used to when I first started, I used to listen to music while I wrote and then I don't know, like I got COVID and that just ruined everything. Like my attention span got really bad. And so now I need to have it silent. And then during COVID, my husband was home and he drove me nuts because, they do.
Yeah.
And so, but I work in the middle of our living room. Like I said, I have a really beautiful office. I don't work in there. But now I like the peace and quiet. So I can't write when the TV's on and I can't write when anything's going on in the background because it distracts me. Yeah. And that never used to be like that. But it is now. And I don't know if it's just getting older or if it was like an after effect of like, I mean, I really did have COVID really bad. So I don't know. Like, so just I like a quiet place. This time of year is perfect for me because I have a beautiful backyard and I go out and I write outside and I have a bubbling rock and that's just like
that's nice.
You can hear the water and then the birds and I don't mind that background sound. It's just like the TV or something. I can't do that because I think it interrupts my
I always say I'm going to go work outside and then I like because my laptop is hooked up to there's cords coming all out of it and then I've got a giant monitor over here. I'm so like comfortable in my little setup that I don't ever want to unplug the laptop and go anywhere. So I'm like, I'm going to go coffee shop, and I don't.
Your office looks outside though, so
yeah, you look at the hot tub. That's right. And I have to keep the shade down. Like here's the hot tub, and then here's my shade, and there's a little strip of the world because it gets very glary.
Yeah, no, I love sitting out there. It's just we do have a really beautiful backyard and everything is starting to bloom now. So after we're finished, I'm going out back because Dawn sent me 9 pages of edits.
Go Dawn. All right. Well, so do you do any kind of market research at this point, or do you feel like you've been in it long enough that you kind of know where to go?
No, I research all the time. I don't necessarily think that the market changes so much, but I think that there's trends. And so I definitely research all the time. Like I'm always looking at the top 100 in multiple genres. I mostly write small town, but like you can pick up really cool things that are that are popular, like, single dad or, what billionaire, millionaire, whatever like that is happening. And then you can kind of integrate it into what you're doing. If it's like a super, super popular trope at this point. So yeah, I do a lot of research.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to. We've talked a little bit about Dawn, who, I used to do this podcast with before I changed the name and everything. We would talk about Storycraft. So she is my developmental editor, and she works. She doesn't work for Evident Inc., but we share clients. So what is Dawn doing for you? How do you guys work together? And tell us a little bit about whether that's a typical process for you, or if that's new because this is a book one, or what's
It's
that all about?
totally okay. So I used to use a developmental editor a long, long time ago, and every time I get the edits back, I would cry. And I just thought, oh, that's just not going to work for me. My husband would be like, oh, you're like, oh, edits are back. He'd be coming home. I'd be like, oh. He's like, oh, edits are back. And then I didn't for a while because, like, I don't know, like emotionally, I wasn't like capable of handling all the, people saying like, oh, this is not good, or this is like, and I never say it's not good, but you're more sensitive to criticism, and it's not. I don't even know if I would call it criticism. It's just, helpful things that they say, which is kind of criticism. But so for a long time I did it, and I did fine, and I've done fine in my career. But then I just came off of a 24 book series, and I started a new series, and I did not want this series to sound like the 24 book series, which is called Aspen Cove. And I just I wanted it to be different. And I knew that you get in this, familiarness with a town and with, its people. And so there is I wouldn't want to call it I don't know. I didn't want it to sound like that. I didn't want it to be as familiar. And so I wanted everything to be different. So I was talking to you, and you did some edits, and I maybe you looked at it and you go, oh God, no, you need Dawn.
I don't think it was like that, but no, I think you were asking me, the process I think that you wanted to use was more Dawn than it is Nancy in terms of.
She's been great. However, let's just talk about how that is not how I work. So I have had to completely redo my process and work around this, I'm giving her things and she's sending them back, and I'm giving her things and she's sending them back, because I didn't want to also get through an entire book and have to rewrite an entire book.
Yeah.
So I asked her if she would work with me as I'm going through the chapters. And so for a while I was just sending, every Friday I would send stuff, she'd send it back, we'd talk, and then I would send her more. And then it just slowed down my process, because generally speaking, I write really fast, but this book is taking forever. And so I said, look, I'm just going to write a chunk. She was gone. She went someplace for a week. I love you, Dawn. But she went someplace for a week. And that was great, because I had this whole week to just write a bunch of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a bunch of stuff, and then I sent all of that stuff to her, and then she did that and then sent it back to me. And then I had time and wrote another 9 chapters. And then that was the last 9 chapters. And I just got those back 3 days ago. And so I'm working on, her, whatever comments she made, she's spot on. Honestly, everything she says, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Do you know that's going to take me 3 weeks to fix that? But yeah, you're right.
I send her everything when I'm done and let her, do a read through and hit. I'm always at this point, I'm like, hit the high points, Dawn. I kind of know what she's going to say in certain places because we've worked together for so long. But I'm just, if I'm really off, that's what I need to know, because I used to the same as you. I didn't cry, but even with Dawn's little velvet hammer that she uses, I still would get it back and be like, I can't even look at them.
Yeah, it takes a few days to let it settle in. And then sometimes, when something says, you're on chapter 32, right? And she says, this would be so much better in chapter 5, and then you're like, oh, yeah, it would. But you realize if I put it in chapter 5, that changes the entire trajectory of everything in the story. And then you have to go back and you have to finesse everything. And so the book is going to be amazing, and it's just going to be so much better because she's a part of it. But it is a new experience for me. However, I do love it. I love it.
You have to remember too, I have to tell myself this, we get to say no. Not every suggestion has to be implemented. They might be great suggestions, but either I don't have the energy to do it, or I think I see it a
Exactly.
different way.
So she said to me, like, book 20, like chapter 24 should just go away. Like, you could like infuse this in all sorts of other chapters. And I was like, nope.
Yeah. So
And I,
ultimately, it's still your
yeah,
book. And I think,
yeah, I was just like, no, because like for me, that would have meant going back to all these chapters to infuse like this 1,200 words or whatever I wrote. It was a short chapter, but
yeah,
it was like I would have had to go through and like change a whole bunch of chapters, and I'm just not there. And I'm just like, nope. And so, she works off of a Google document. And so, and I just put like green check marks off of everything. So if she ever like goes in and says, oh, she's out on this, she doesn't. But if she did,
yeah.
she'd know like this is where I'm at. And then next to that chapter, I'm like, decided to keep it.
And that's the thing to remember is that like she's not going to take that personally.
No, she's great. And honestly, everything that she has recommended has been, like I said, she's spot on, and it's perfect. And, I told her what I wanted her to do. And one of the things that I really felt like I had not done well with some of my books was show like this deep emotional side of things. And so I said, I really need to get to the feels in this book. And
Great.
so she is
Yeah.
really digging into the feels, and she's just making the book stronger. So
My whole family now has a like a almost a meme that's in the family where someone will say something and someone else will go thoughts, feelings, emotions, because Dawn has a macro that she can just hit two buttons and it'll pop up a comment that says thoughts, feelings, emotions, because she hits it whenever there's a place for you to bring in some deeper POV. And I was like, you can stop with the thoughts, feelings, emotions. I know. But even my husband was like, thoughts, feelings,
so
emotions.
thank you for that, because you led me to her, and I think she'll just be an incredible part of my team from
Good.
this point forward.
And we will somehow, I'm not an expert at this, but show notes or whatever, we will flag Dawn Alexander and share a link to her site in case you want to incorporate Dawn into your process. Although I know she is booked at least as far out as I am. So, but she's great and it's worth the wait. Okay, so now that we're done marketing for Dawn, let's see. So talk me through, like, what are you going to do for this launch? And what does a typical launch look like? You were at book 24. So is that launch process very different from what book one in your series will be?
Yeah, like, well, I mean, once I got past like book 5 or 6 in the series, I didn't really have to do anything. I just had to write and launch. I
Yeah.
didn't really do any promotions or anything outside of, sharing it in my newsletter, or but I wasn't running any ads. But I constantly run ads to book one of all of my series. And honestly, I'm not really like, I've really been thinking about the launch only this week because I'm coming up on the on the completion of the book, in a couple weeks, hopefully. But honestly, like, launching is super hard because it changes all the time, and what everybody's doing, whether you're like doing like massive TikTok stuff, or you're like doing, like, I always do a newsletter. I always ask my friends to share. Well, I actually never ask, but they just offer, and then I say yes. It's hard for me to ask people to
Yeah.
do things. So I don't ask a lot. But I always share for other people, and I think that goes a long way, and people are happy to share for me because I share everything for them.
Do you put up a
And
pre-order?
I have a pre-order, but it's a short one. And so here's something about pre-orders that I learned. Like, everybody will say, "Oh, pre-orders are awful, awful, awful." I don't think they are.
I like them.
I actually love I love having pre-order. Well, I in between the 24 book series, I wrote 2 rom-coms because I just needed a palate cleanser. Rom-coms are out of my lane, and so I didn't expect them to be like major big sellers, but they did really well. Although the second book, I forgot to load the final. I had a lot of pre-orders, which was really great, but I forgot to load the final file.
Oh no.
And so 5 days prior to the book releasing, Amazon canceled all the pre-orders.
God.
And so that book started at, like, what is it? What's the bottom number that you can be in Amazon? Like, that's where it
5 million?
started. Yeah. And so my thing about pre-orders is, if you have a pre-order up, like, then you're like, even if it's not doing well, you're starting at 60,000 or so. and
Yeah.
you're moving up from there instead of moving up from like 5 trillion, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, pre-orders are it for me because I saw the difference in like how long it took me to push up from not a pre-order and it not being like my normal genre to write in. So it wasn't like I had people clamoring to buy this book. Um, but I'm so glad I wrote those 2 books. It really did just like it was a palate cleanser. It just like cleaned out everything that was old and I was able to bring in new. But I did learn a huge lesson about making sure your stuff is loaded.
So how will you adapt? Do you have like calendar notices now?
Yeah, no, I have. Yeah. Well, I have a Melissa too,
Yeah.
and we just both kind of like let it like it was over a holiday weekend that it had to been loaded up, and we were both gone, and there's no blame for anything. Like at the end of the day, it's your business,
Yeah.
and it's you're responsible for everything. So yes, I have. Well, now I just load it right away. I load the copy like um before it goes to my art team. It's just loaded, and like my art team's great. Like I always do this like be brave. I do a be brave gift card. So like if they find anything that's I'm not asking them to find something, but if they do find something, I enter them in to win a gift card, and so I draw a name,
That's a
and so
really
it's like
good idea. We put up a
yeah
typo thread in my ARC group, and there's always typos because of my editing
always
process. But they are so helpful. I don't really reward them other than saying thank you so much. But there's like 100
oh
readers who they go in there and they find everything. That's a great idea.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's like sometimes it's usually just like a $15 gift card or something, and I just like and all the names go in a little pot, and we just draw one out, and so like people are it's a chance, and I have to say like ARC readers are amazing because like, and I call it being brave because some of them they feel bad like telling you that there's something wrong, and I'm the kind of person that's like tell me because I want it to go out like in its most pristine state,
Yeah.
and if there's something wrong with it, I want to know. Um,
But you
but
look at that ARC version just to be sure that you've got something
there's
up.
something in there because even if there's a typo in it, I can go in and correct that right
Yeah,
away, but I can't correct there not being a file in there. So the minute it goes out to the ARC readers now, I load that file up to Amazon and that's where it's at, you
me
know.
too. That's exactly what I do. Excellent. All right. Well, let's talk about mindset stuff a little bit. Um, I know that you are increasingly moving into like kind of a mindset phase, maybe because we've talked more and more about it lately with me just for
Yeah.
lunch. So I'm curious. I'll give you some free space to talk about the things that you like to sort of study and where you are in that. But how do you keep yourself excited about writing after a 24 book series and books before and after that? Like, what is it that gets you to the computer?
Well, I realize how lucky I am. Like how fortunate I am to have a job that I can stay at home and I can write from anywhere. Like we flew out to California last week for a friend's retirement, and I was able to work when there was downtime, and like not many people can do that and call it a job or have a career. And so I think just the whole gratitude thing about being able to do something that I love, to tell stories, to entertain people, to make people feel something. Like that's a gift to me that I'm able to do that.
For sure.
And so it does keep me motivated. I'm not as motivated as I was like when I first started my career. Like I used to like prolifically write like 10 books a year, and now I'm down to like I'm writing the things that I want to write. Not that I didn't want to write the other things, but you can dive deeper and you can really tell a story that is important to you. And I don't tell a story that's not important to me. So there's always a message in my books, and most of the time is anybody that knows me, like my big thing is like in a world where you can be anything, be kind. And so most of my books have those themes of like just community and being the best human that you can be. Like I think most people that know me, like when I leave them, I always just say, "Okay, love you, be a good human." And so I feel like what drives me is that I get to write these books that make me feel good, that make other people feel good, and that's
Yeah.
it.
it's kind of your platform to share that message too, in
Yeah.
not necessarily a coded format, but it's like the spoonful of sugar helping the medicine go down. Like here's what I believe about the world. I'm going to wrap it in this beautiful little romance for you to enjoy.
Yeah, and I really believe that there's good in everybody. Like, and I just think that often enough we don't look deep enough to find it. Like the world is very surface oriented, but like I think that often enough you have to, like, you might have to look deeper, to find the good in people. But I find it in everybody, you know.
You're such a nice person. But
Oh,
tell me a little bit about sort of your practices. I know that we've talked a little bit about like abundance thinking and gratitude. Do you actually like have a practice? Do you meditate? What do you do to sort of keep yourself in the right frame of mind?
I do meditate every day. And it depends. Most of the time it's like before I go to bed. So because I have a writer's brain, and I'm sure every writer can like understand this, when I go to bed, my brain is just like, and so I put like one earbud because then I'll wake up my husband up, and I put a guided meditation in. So for me to like meditate on my own without any guided meditation would be really difficult because of very active imagination, and it's squirrel, 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 squirrel,
Yeah.
it'd be all over the place. So I do guided meditation and I fall asleep to it, and it's just going. Like some of them are like 2 hours long, and I'm listening to it while I'm sleeping. And I think the days that I don't do that, I wake up not as happy. Like I wake up happier because I'm listening to, these great meditations. A lot of them
What about
are
the earbud? Does it get lost in your bed ever?
sometimes, yeah. Usually what happens is I wake up and I just will like, I'll wake up like in the middle of the night and I'll go, oh, yeah, it's here. Like, or if I roll over and
Yeah.
then it's uncomfortable and then I'll just toss it onto my nightstand.
Like my
But
cold feet socks. I have to have them on when I go to bed, but I always wake up with them off. So
because
somewhere
you
in the
kick them
night,
off.
I take them off and put them next. Sometimes I put them together and stick them under my pillow for whatever reason.
Yeah. So like everything about me has changed over the last few years, and I am a big mindset like abundance believer, and I think that what you put into your brain is what you get back out. Like all the messages that you allow to come into your life are exactly how your life is going to be. So I don't listen to the news. Like if someone asks me what's going on, I only know because my husband will be like, "Oh my gosh, did you?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to know. And it's not that I'm burying my head in the sand. I know what's going on, but you don't need to necessarily always let it affect you in the way that those things are designed to affect you.
Definitely.
So
So you said that everything about you has changed in the last couple of years. Is that a post-pandemic change, or what has made things change?
yeah. Well, okay. So I had two near death experiences in 2020 and 2021 that really change your perspective. And when you're in a place where the doctors are telling you you're not going to come out of the hospital, um, you realize that there's just nothing that's really important but the love you give. And so that changed a lot of things about me, and just my perspective on everything about what's important and what's not important. And really, um, there's a lot of people that'll listen to this and go, ugh, but it's it's where you are at in your life. And at that point in my life, like nothing was important. It wasn't important for me to write the next book. It wasn't important for me to, like, there's just so many things that weren't important. What was important to me was the love that I left my family, and what, if I was going to leave, like they thought I was going to leave, then it was those things that I was going to leave behind that were important. Like I wanted to make sure that the legacy I left behind was just one where, my only goal was that my kids could say she was a good human.
Yeah.
And so that changes the way, like how you perceive things and how you go about your life. And then I found a mindset coach, which I've been working with for a long time now. And that has changed a lot. Like she just keeps me centered and helps me like work out through, like we all have old wounds. And so just sort of getting past those old wounds so that you can like thrive in the life that you're in right now.
Yeah, I think that's advice anybody can use, whether they are on a deathbed or it's a
Girl,
potential
there was
deathbed or not. But
like I was there and like they're like, oh, we don't. And I was just like, there's no way I'm not making out of this. Like, that is my mindset anyway. Like, people will tell you, like, you can't do this. And I will always, like, my whole personality is like, oh, I can't. Let me show you.
Are you competitive? Is that one of your strengths?
I don't know if it's competitive or if I'm just snarky or like, I just like anybody that tells me I can't do something, I will do it just to prove them wrong. I'm really like, I wish somebody would tell me right now. Maybe you should tell me, Kelly, you can't lose 25 pounds. Cause then you know what? I'd be like, I'm going to prove you wrong.
I don't think you can.
Okay, good.
Well, so that was actually my next question. What do you do to stay, because this is a sedentary life, we do tend to sit a lot. What do you do physically to stay healthy?
Oh, up until this year, I did nothing. Like, I used to walk. Like, okay, so COVID, like, COVID was weird for me because it gave me this like weird, like, my insides were vibrating. That's all I could, like, it was just like this weird thing. Yeah. And I just was like, I had to walk, and I was walking like 4 to 6 hours a day, 800 miles a month because I could not sleep. I should have been skinny. I was not. I mean, I guess when I came home, it was like the box of Little Debbie snacks that I was eating that kept me all in check. But I could not, I could not sleep. I was only sleeping an hour or two a night, which was like, and so I thought, well, if I just walked and walked and walked, so that wasn't it. And then after I had hip replacement recently in January. And then after that, I decided, like, the first time in all my life that I was going to get fit. So I now go to the gym and I work with a personal trainer. I went last night and had my very first massage.
Oh, I like massage.
Yeah, I just like, I wasn't sure I would like people touching me, you know, but it was really, really nice. And she was great. And I really wanted her to work on, like, you know, like the pain I still have in my hip from the surgery. And so it was fabulous. So now I'm on this consistent, like, schedule working out with personal trainer at the YMCA. And it's been good. Like, I think there's something about paying somebody and showing up because you're paying somebody that makes you do it. So I show up regardless of whether, like, if I get up in the morning and I don't want to go, and there's a lot of mornings I don't want to go, I still go.
Yep.
I go because he's there waiting for me and I'm paying him to train me. And I don't think people see the value in that. Some people don't, like, but let me tell you, it's worth every penny because I will never work myself as hard as he works me.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't show up if there wasn't somebody waiting for me. So I've gained 5 pounds of muscle, which is, it's a lot. Like, I'm just doing weight training. And so I've been working with him since March. So since March to now, I've gained 5 pounds of muscle because they do the whole like measurement thing, like with the machine. Yeah. And so I was like super excited because, like, I'm older woman. And so it's harder to gain muscle in your later years.
So critical for women of our age and older. As we get close to and then come through menopause, we're losing muscle so much faster. And that's what makes you, I think, legitimately old, when you're frail and you really are in danger just walking around because your muscles cannot support the activities that you're trying to do. So I think maintaining muscle is our number one goal.
Yeah. So I pretty much hired him for the rest of the year.
Good. Well, I'm sure he's happy about that. And you'll be happy too.
Yeah. Well, it's so good. Like, I mean, I'm sore all the time. Like, that is not, like, it's the new norm. Like, the new norm is Jim will come home. Jim's my husband. He'll come, how do you feel? I'm like, oh, I'm so sore. I'm so sore. But, or, you know,
I feel like it means I'm using my body, and how lucky am I that I have a body that can do these things, you know?
And I think the other thing is, like, writing, like, you get so involved in your work that you don't take out the time to do stuff like that. And I'm just going to tell everybody, you have the time to do anything that you want to do. Absolutely. It's like, you just have to make the choice to do it for yourself because it's so important. And I realized it's not too late. I don't think it's like, I'm 60. And so I don't think it's too late to start working out or start building muscle, but I wish I would have done it when I was 30.
Yeah. But I mean, I think my mom always said regret is a wasted emotion because you make the best choices you can with the information you have at any given point in time.
For sure.
Or you try to. So I think that message, it's never too late, applies equally well for physical and mindset changes as it does to undertaking something new, like deciding to write a book. Because I've had so many people, especially when I was working full time and I had 2 little kids and I was a military spouse and we were moving a lot. I had a lot of people like, I don't know how you have time to write books. How are you finding time to do this? And it was mystifying because at that point I did not feel like I didn't have time. It was something I really wanted to do. So it just, of course I was doing it. And I think what you just said about you have time is absolutely true. You just have to want the thing.
Right. Well, it's always amazing to me. Like I have lots of author friends, obviously, but like I get a lot done. I get a lot of stuff done. I don't have kids in the house anymore, but even when I had kids in the house, I mean, I get a lot of stuff done and people are like, how do you do so much? And I don't know. Like, I think, knowing you, like very kinetic energy. It's like, I'm always moving, always doing something. And I don't do just one thing at a time. Like I could never just sit and watch TV. Oh my
Oh
God.
no. I mean, I can for an hour or two, but I'm usually crocheting while I do it because I feel like I have to be productive if I'm going to sit still.
Yeah. So I just do all sorts. So like for me, like when we're talking about process at night, that's when I do my ads. That's when I do, like, I got the computer in front of me and there's something going on in the background and I can work like on things like that when there's background noise. And so I'm doing my ads or I'm doing creatives or I'm doing something. And so I get all of that done. So my work day is probably a very long work day when you really add up the hours I'm working, but I'm doing other things and I'm still enjoying my life. And
Yeah. It doesn't feel like work.
no, no. And I love doing ads. I don't like how they always perform, but I do love doing them.
You're welcome to do mine whenever you feel like it. If you're just bored and. All right. Well, and then one final question, because you mentioned ads. Are you doing TikTok?
No, no.
Okay, good.
I have tried. I think like it's kind of like all that things like I don't know, like some people are really successful in TikTok and then but I think it's kind of like that where you have to do it like you have to really commit to it and you have to
I think so.
like 3 or 4 times a day, 7 days a week, and then you might get that one.
Right.
You may get that one ad that goes viral that does everything for you, and everybody wants that. But when you're starting to compare like the hours that you can put into that or the hours that you can put into something else, I really have to decide like what is going to bring me the most bang for my buck.
Yeah.
And it's not TikTok for me.
When I was doing it, you're right. Like you have to do so many a day, but so much time into it. And then I would become obsessed with it. So I would like check it constantly and that would distract from something else I was actually doing. And like, I don't think I have a good personality for something
Well,
like that.
and it's like if you have okay, so something that happened to me, I decided a couple weeks ago, oh, I'm going to try TikTok, maybe a couple months ago again, and I got this like what I thought was a great screen. What is the slideshow? Yeah, slideshow.
Yeah.
And I put it up there, and I accidentally put it to my personal account,
Oops.
and it got like 1,700 views or something, which was like so much better than my business account. And I was like, that's interesting. And then I put the same one into my business account and it was like, your obligatory like 252 things, views. And then that was it. And I was just like, that's very interesting. So obviously there's a throttle back
Yeah,
in the business end of TikTok. And I think that they're gearing up to the whole pay to play thing as well.
I'm sure.
And sometimes I wonder, like, maybe I should just run some TikTok ads and then, but do it TikTok ads and not just TikTok.
Yeah. I did do a TikTok ad. I don't have enough experience to say whether that's a good idea or not. Doing it once is not a great idea. I can tell you that.
No, so like, no, TikTok's not my thing. And because it's a time vampire, it takes way too much time for what I'm getting back from it. So,
Love that time vampire.
yeah. So it's just not, it's not my thing. And I think that TikTok, like for me, I'm small town romance. And I think that some like, Carrie Alex does great on that. And Elsie Silver does great. And Catherine Cowles does great. I don't do great on TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not my
I'm not going to say
space.
never, but right now it's not my thing.
Right. Well, like so I have a PA and if Melissa ever like has, a million hours left over to do stuff, like maybe that's something that will have her, pick up. I've talked to her about it recently about like just like giving it a good like 6 month whirl and seeing if we could make it do something. But Um, neither one, both of us are like, okay.
Yeah, I'm ambivalent about it. I have teenagers, and so every now and then I think like, well, maybe I could pay one of them, but they're boys, and so they don't like no.
Yeah, but you write hockey romance, so maybe like
But like one of them, all of his accounts that he follows are like UFC fighters, so I don't think he would capture the right elements
the
to
audience,
attract my readers.
the audience
And
that
the
you
other
need.
one is a rock climber, so all he follows are people climbing mountains and rocks and walls and things.
I see a cage fighting book for you and a rock climbing book for
No,
you in the future.
no, I'm veering off to cozy mystery. I'll keep writing hockey.
I know. How did that happen? I know this is like my interview or whatever, but like tell me how that happened.
Well, so I think I don't know. I feel I'm 10 years into this now, and I feel like I'm just having a pivot moment and a kind of a reevaluation. And the funny thing about me being so entrenched in romance is that I, prior to writing one and editing them, had never read a romance, unless you count Flowers in the Attic, which I did read as like a 13-year-old. But I always read Agatha Christie and all the Nancy Drew books and the Hardy Boys, and I was always reading mystery. And when I sit down, if I just get to pick a book, it'll always be a thriller or a mystery. So there's
What's
definitely
the
something
first
to be done.
romance book you like? Flowers in the Attic was the first romance book. Like, well, it's not even a
Is that a
romance. It's like
romance?
with
I
a
don't think it is.
got like romantic, weird romantic elements, but yeah.
Well, and Clan of the Cave Bear had a strong romantic theme. In fact, that was the
Okay.
first place I learned about blowjobs.
So the first book, so I'm like you, like I was in my 30s when I read my very first, I was reading like John Grisham and,
Uh-huh.
you know, and, um, and a friend of mine gave me, Jude Devereaux's A Knight in Shining Armor. And I'm like, it's just not my book. And she's like, you have to read it. And I'm like, and I devour that book. And like, oh my God. So like when I first started reading romance, it was all like historical, like Lisa Kleypas and,
Yeah,
I mean, it was like, but I had never read a romance. My mom wasn't a reader. So it wasn't like we did this, like, how people sneak in and they steal your mom's bodice rippers. I
well,
didn't, there was none of that. So I read A Knight in Shining Armor and I remember thinking back then, like, oh, that's so great. And then just thinking, I was a dental assistant then and making up stories. I'm like, huh, like, hmm. And I never wrote. And then about, you know, 10, 15 years later, I started just dabbling in writing and I'm like, oh, I could do this. Like, I
yeah.
could do this.
I think that's kind of how my writing started too. I knew I wanted to write a book. I've always known I wanted to write a book, but I didn't know what it would be about. And so when I started editing and romance was the thing that kind of fell onto my desk, I was like, I think I could do that. So that was how it happened.
Well, when I was in high school, my high school English teacher told me that I would grow up and I would become a writer.
Wow.
And I laughed at him. His name was Miss Dr. Anderson. And I laughed at him. I'm like, oh, you're crazy. And I wish that he was alive because I would be able to, like, I would love to go give him a hug and say, you were right. Like, you saw something in me that I couldn't even fathom seeing in myself,
That's
but you
crazy.
saw it before it was ever like he saw like this little bud of something that was going to happen with my writing. He said I was a poetic writer and that I had like grace to my words. And I was just like, and I wish like back then he was like 67. And so now he's passed away, long passed away. But I really wish that I could have like gone up to him and said, like, yeah, you were right.
Yeah. Yeah. Good teachers are so hard to come by, and you always remember the ones that make a difference to you. I've got like 4 or 5 names that are always sort of in the background, like, thank you.
Same. Like, my second grade teacher was like the one that actually made me feel seen for the first time in my life. And, it's like you just think back to these people that, molded you. Like you think you get molded by your parents and you do, you definitely do, but you spend more time in school than you spend like with your family at home. Like you get home from school and you got like about 4 hours maybe, and then you're in
Yeah.
bed. So yeah.
Well, we got through all of my questions. Do you have anything else that you kind of want to add or tack
No,
on?
this was a lot of fun. I didn't expect it, I didn't have any expectations, which is like such a great way to go into things because then they just unfold And yeah, I am chatty. Like when I went to my massage yesterday, I just talked to her about everything. And I was just like, I'm just chatty. And she's just like, I like it because most people are just really silent. And I'm like, oh, am I supposed to be silent?
Yeah, I go back and forth about what I feel like I should be doing during a massage. But all right.
Yeah.
Well, so tell us one more time the name of the next book that's coming out and when we should be looking for it.
Okay, so it's called Timber Ridge, and it's the first book in the Port Promise series, and it will release August 15th.
August.
On Amazon because it's a Kindle Unlimited book.
Okay, perfect. And people can find you obviously on Amazon. And do you have a website too, Kelly?
Yes, it's authorkellycollins.com.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much for hanging out and BSing with me.
Thank you.
You can find story writing tips, tricks, coaching, and courses at our site, www.evidentinc.com. Get live feedback in our writing community at Facebook at facebook.com/evidentinc. And find past episodes of Story Strategy at our YouTube channel. Story powers the world, and we can't wait to help you tell yours.